Collaborative Learning and Action Institute's Apply It webinar series. Today we have the pleasure of being joined by Jacob Korenblum, who's the co-founder and CEO of Souktel, which is the Middle East's first mobile platform that links youth with jobs and financial services. Jacob holds an EDM from Harvard University, where he also served as a Reynolds Fellow in Social Enterprise. Previously, Jacob has led impact evaluations of UK IT and enterprise projects in Asia and Africa for Oxfam, and directed the monitoring evaluation unit of USAID's Ruwad Youth Livelihoods project in Palestine. Jacob is a 2010 Silicon Valley Tech Award recipient, and his work for Souktel has been profiled by the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, PBS, and The Guardian. We're also very fortunate to have Jacob present at the 2013 Global Youth Economic Opportunities Conference a little less than a month ago. Drawing on Souktel's 10 years of experience providing mobile solutions for USAID, the UN, and other foundation-funded youth livelihoods programming, Jacob will outline 5 easy ways for practitioners to leverage mobiles in their work. At the end, we'll have about 20 minutes for a Q&A, so as we go through the presentation, please type any questions you have into the chat box on the lower left side of your screen. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jacob.
Chelsea, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Fantastic. And everyone, I hope you can hear me okay as well, although I know we can't hear you. Great to see such a fantastic turnout. We have 32 people on the webinar thus far, and I hope more will join as we get started here. So again, as Chelsea said, it's a real pleasure to be speaking with you this in a few questions. I'm Todd. If you have questions, and we will look for those questions as we go along. So what I'd love to do is, in the next 45 minutes, share our perspective as an implementer of mobile solutions and software in youth livelihoods and microfinance. You mentioned we've been doing this for about 7-8 years now. This is a little bit of background on who we are as an organization. We as a team, just to give you context before we get into technology so you'll know who we are and what we're talking about and why we're talking about these things. We are a team of about 20 individuals based primarily in the Middle East, but also with a presence in Canada, in the US, and in sub-Saharan Africa. We actually come from where you sit today. So we come from the USAID or UN project implementer side. As Chelsea mentioned, I formerly worked for Oxfam, for USAID projects and so forth. Our team have worked for Save the Children. They've worked for USAID bureaus directly or missions directly. And so when we come to design mobile technology, we do so with the perspective of being in the shoes of an implementer on the ground, whether that means monitoring and evaluation, whether that means integrating activities into youth livelihood programs. We've been there. And so that gives us a unique perspective on how to integrate technology. Here are some of our partners you can see at the screen, and I'm very glad to see some of representatives of those partners on the call today. It's fantastic. And these are some of the core focus areas that we concentrate on, but they're by no means the sum total. We work in a lot of different environments. So let me walk you through what we do in terms of engaging with young people and using mobile in youth livelihoods and microfinance projects to give you a flavor of how in your own projects and in your own work, you might be able to do the same thing. We, in the work that we've done, and we do about 15 to 20 different projects per year where we design, deliver, and in most cases operate mobile information platforms for USAID livelihoods and microfinance projects. Over the years, we've really highlighted 5 different ways, and it's handy that there are 5, it's easy to remember, but it really does distill down to, I'd say, about 5 different ways that mobile can be used to engage young people. And so I'm going to give you just a broad, high-level overview and then take you through each of them one by one so you get a bit of a better sense of how you can, in your own organization's work, leverage some of these strategies. So one of the very first things we did was very rudimentarily matching people through mobile technology, taking labor supply and labor demand and connecting them together, linking young people with local employers who have work to offer, and overcoming the barriers in many of the countries where we all work, which relate to technology access. The notion that you may not have regular access to a computer, you may not use your email account regularly, you may not have internet where you live or in your surroundings, you may not be in a formal education setting, or if you are, your college, your school, your university may not have a computer center that you can use. So as a result, you're looking for a quick, cheap, and accessible way to get information about livelihood support. Mobile phones across sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, the Americas, Asia Pacific, the Caribbean, whatever region, Washington, D.C., they're the fastest growing strategy and the fastest growing tool that young people use and can leverage to get information. So matching for us, linking supply and demand was one of the most basic ways that we found we could leverage mobile tech to enhance youth livelihood outcomes. That's a very specific application of mobile technology, though. Broadening and going to a sort of general strategic overview of tech, informing young people, letting them know about opportunities that are available. This sounds basic, but again, it goes a long way to boosting scale and reach and engagement from young people if you're able to reach out to them and inform them via mobile. Informing, however, is mainly a one-way push of information from you to the young people you serve. And so interacting is a two-way exchange of information that can supplement that initial push out of details. So beyond just telling a young person, hey, there's a skills training available for you at this time, at this date, at this place, we're now asking more sophisticated questions. What do you think are the biggest obstacles you face when you're looking for work? Or what are the types of microfinance products that you would most value in your community? So this idea of interactive two-way data collection is another critical way you can use mobile. Subsequent to that, two other more in-depth components or more in-depth usages, one which we call in the generic sense learning, but that pertains to content which can be accessed by a mobile device. In our case, we focus on delivering pre-recorded or pre-packaged text and audio segments which teach young people about livelihood concepts. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Finally, sharing. So beyond informing someone, telling them about something, beyond interacting, so having a two-way conversation, and beyond learning, which can be done individually on demand, sharing is really a network effect. The notion that you as a member of a group or a cohort of young people want to reach out and touch base with or connect with and exchange information with people like you. And so some of the technologies we've developed in this area facilitate and ensure that that can happen. So we've got matching of supply and demand, informing, interacting, learning, and sharing. And I'm going to go through each of these in more detail now. Feel free to, as I go through these, pop your questions into the chat window, and we'll get to them as they come in. The key benefits, of course, relating to the use of mobile tech in general, as I've mentioned, is saving time, especially when it comes to things like monitoring and evaluation, saving resources, so ensuring that you use your very limited project funds more effectively. And then I would say one of the foremost benefits is reaching more people. The scale of this technology is tremendous, and it's not that difficult to utilize it to reach scale, so that instead of interacting with 500 young people, you're able to interact with 50,000 young people. So let me start with the basic, but again, fairly specific usage of mobile tech that we as Souktel have really focused on since we started. And just to recap briefly again, what we're looking to do here is solve the challenge which we find exists in many labor markets in the developing world, which is no good way for labor supply and labor demand to connect with each other. You're a young person, you want to find a job, there's no good resource at your disposal. We come from Palestine, which has, again, relatively high per capita income for the developing world. Most Palestinians do finish high school, a good proportion go on to university. There are nonetheless 0 career centers on university campuses, which help young people prepare for the workforce. And in high school, less than 3% of instructional time is devoted to what you're going to do next when you leave the classroom. And so for a young person coming into the job market, they have very, very limited support available. Government resources are scarce. There are, especially in the Middle East region, not good web resources, and furthermore, a lack of reliable web access. So that's kind of one side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, we have employers who are really struggling to find qualified labor. And it's shocking. I mean, we have UN data, which we refer to on a regular basis, indicating that in countries like Egypt, which have a high youth unemployment rate, employers are still struggling to fill 800,000 plus positions. So 800,000 jobs are actually being unfilled in a year because employers don't know how to find skilled workers. And so what we did here, as you can see through these basic steps, is create a service which is integrated via SMS, as it's presented here, but also using audio touch-tone hotlines so that young people can call in if they cannot read. And then also web. We obviously don't prejudice against anyone who has web access. There are 3 different ways you can access the service, but the purpose of the service in each case is the same. If you're a job seeker, it enables you to sign up, to send a bit of basic information about yourself through a series of text message questions and answers or audio touch-tone menu choices. So you're able to say, hey, I live in the center of the city. I am able to work during these hours. I have experience doing A, B, C, D as my skill sets. I'm a carpenter, for instance. That all gets uploaded into the cloud and can then be searched by employers who use the service. And on the obverse side of the coin, employers can do something similar. They can create bite-sized job ads, and they're able, as a result, to upload those job ads so that they become searchable by you. And so suddenly what you have is supply and demand able to find each other simply by accessing the information through their cell phone. You don't need to have a very specific device. This works on any phone that can handle a text message or a voice call. You don't have to purchase any hardware. It's something you can access at any time. It increases access for young women in particular, who in many traditional backgrounds may not feel comfortable going out, or their families may not feel comfortable with them going out in person to look for work. We have used this technology as an integrated part of Youth Livelihoods programs that USAID has funded in various different regions. And the way this works is the technology comes in as a support or as a supplement to the training that is being given in person in various places like career centers or face-to-face training venues. So the technology works into the project design such that once young people leave the face-to-face or in-person training venue, they're then able to access this additional content on their cell phone. And so there's a real complementarity, and what we found is, again, USAID missions find this an excellent scaler and an excellent value add to some of the more traditional project designs. It's a way to carry over the benefit of in-person training, whether that's soft or hard skills, and ensure that young people, once they leave the classroom or the building, are able to still continue that learning and knowledge exchange that helps them get jobs. So we use this in the Akazi Kanoze Youth Livelihoods project in Rwanda, which is USAID funded and implemented by EDC. We have used this in the International Youth Foundation's Youth for the Future project in Jordan, which is a youth workforce development project funded by AID there. We use it in Morocco with the Education for Employment Foundation in their project, which is funded by the MasterCard Foundation. And in each of those cases, those are 3 examples. We run the platform currently in about 8 different countries. And in each of those cases, as mentioned, at the start of project design, it's integrated as a component where it adds value to what is going on in person. I wonder if there are any questions here. I see one coming in, so maybe I'll quickly take a minute to respond to that. One of the participants has just asked, what's the business model? Are employers paying? Do students pay? Is there a commission, and so forth? So we do this in different ways. It really depends on the demographic. When we did this in Somalia for the Somali Youth Livelihoods Program, that was again an AID-funded multi-year livelihoods project, the demographic was very low income. And so at a start, the service was entirely subsidized by core project funding. So there were lines in the project budget which were basically allocated toward the setup and the launch of these services. But in every case, what we try to do is transition it to a revenue-generating model where, Mike, to answer your question, both the employers and the job seekers pay. On the job seeker side, when you're sending an SMS, you would pay a light premium fee. And again, the goal here is not to penalize the job seekers such that they're unable to access the information because they can't afford it. The goal is to cover the ongoing costs so that we have cost sustainability. So where you would pay maybe 1 or 2 cents to send an SMS to your friend, here you're going to pay 3 cents or possibly 4 cents. And again, the total cost of an interaction on the service is far inferior to a session at an internet cafe or any of the competing mechanisms you might use to find a job. So traveling in person on public transport, the cost you would pay there. Now, you don't have to set it up in that way. It can continue to be totally free to the job seeker, and the costs are covered through employer fees. So employers pay to post ads on the service, and that then covers the cost, so job seekers use it for free. In each of the countries where we run this platform, the pricing model is different, and it's customized to suit the needs of the project. For us, that's a very important point. No two projects are alike. No two countries are alike. This is not an off-the-shelf plug-and-play kind of solution. We design a customized platform for each country and each project where we work. Mike, I hope that answered your question. I see another question coming in. I'll take one more quick question on this, and then what I want to do is make sure we have enough time to move on, and I can take additional questions at the end. Jane, if you have a quick question, let me know. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is move on to the next unit so that we can cover that as well. Okay, and I see one more quick question coming in. What I'm going to do is let me move on, and then I'll handle questions for this and for the job match unit at the end of the next section, if that's okay. Jane, just to answer quickly, most of the youth who are using basic feature phones, so they're not smartphones necessarily, but we do find in a lot of markets is that when young people own smartphones, they typically are not using the data component of the smartphones because it's expensive, because they're unable to purchase it, because the reception is not good. Again, this varies totally between countries though. So in Kenya, we may see with cheaper data, more young people accessing this platform through web on phone. But in a country like Iraq, for example, which does not yet have 3G, everyone, regardless of their handset, is going to access the platform via SMS or via audio. Sherry, let me handle your question at the end of this next section, if that's okay. What I want to do is just move ahead to what we call the informing part of the work that we do, and which I would recommend strongly is a very quick and easy way for your project to integrate mobile tech and to reach out to you. So here, this is just an example of what our software looks like. There are lots of different options that you have if you're interested in sending out information to young people via mobile. Ours is just one. What our platform does is, again, it's customized, so it's not an off-the-shelf solution. It's not something you buy online and can then start using right away. What it is, though, is very customized toward the specific needs of your project, and it's integrated with database systems or MISs or GISs, which you may have. But nonetheless, just to give you a general sense of how this works, what you'll find, again, out there in the marketplace are lots of tools that you can use. You can download them, you can purchase them on a pay-as-you-go basis. And this is our screenshot, but others may look something like this. What they allow you to do is upload large groups of phone numbers of the youth in your program. And what you can then do is group them according to different criteria. So if you want to send out messages to young women only, or to women in the north or women in the south, this enables you to do that. Once you have selected the criteria and the people that you'd like to send the messages to, you can, from a web interface, type that message in, and then it goes out to the groups that you would like to reach. In our case, for example, the systems that we create also have very clear tracking metrics, and you see here a lot of different reporting options where you can monitor the quantity of messages you've sent out, whether the messages were received by young people, what the text of each message was, and so on and so forth. So you've got good quantitative tracking of the use of the tool. You can look at cost per participant data, so what messages are costing per young person in your program over time relative to the follow-up action or the result which ensues as a result of receiving these messages. This type of technology can be used for lots of different things. So you see here we've got a number of examples from the projects that we support. Reminders about training courses. It sounds very rudimentary, but what a lot of our project partners were finding was that young people were missing training opportunities simply because they didn't know about them. And that led to lower participation rates. That also led to poorer outcomes for the project as a whole. The simple act of sending reminders to young people and having it reach them on their cell phone boosted attendance and boosted participation. And if you want to in your own project, although I don't know that you want to penalize a control group, but if you want to try two different groups, send the alerts to one and don't send the alerts to the other and see the difference in terms of attendance, I think you'll see that it is quite dramatic. We also use it for what we call calls to action. So in Sudan and South Sudan, Education Development Center, one of our partners there, runs a radio program on civil society issues. There's an educational component to it as well. When they've got a specific program coming on that they want people to listen to ensure that the audience is there, they will send these calls to action. This can also be, a tie-in message to a specific event like International Youth Day or International Women's Day. Again, encouraging young people to take action in their communities as a result of these specific occasions. And we use them also for program updates to encourage buy-in to a program. If you're introducing a livelihoods intervention into a new community, the older members of the community may not have an understanding of its impact. If they're signed up for the service, you can communicate with them and tell them, hey, as of today, 700 young people in your community have finished a training course. And so it's a much more effective way of sending messages out at scale, but in a targeted fashion so that you're getting your information across. Just a couple of quick points in terms of what we do, just so you get a picture of it. We also handle everything related to what we call mobile network connectivity, and that's a big piece of the puzzle here. We build the software, which you've seen, and we set that up and we customize it for your project, but we also handle everything relating to calling up the mobile network, getting contracts signed with them, connecting the service to the gateways of the mobile network, everything relating to billing, to purchasing credit, and so forth. These are all things which it's important to take into consideration as you move ahead with launching some of these mobile services. In each of these cases, you will have to interact with either a company who sells messages that you use to send out over these services, or the mobile networks directly, in which case it's a much longer and more involved interaction. On our team, we have former mobile network staff who know how to do this work because they've done it from the other side of the table. And so we handle all of that from our end. But again, you may look at different options in terms of what suits your organization best. If you've got a good relationship directly with a mobile network in the country where you're working, if it's Nigeria or Indonesia, you may want to approach them directly. Just to pause for a moment before I move ahead and answer some questions here, Sherry has asked, getting back to the job seeker side of things, do we track placement for job seekers that have used your services? So again, it varies by country, and we do the follow-up M&E in partnership with the implementing partners, so the Save the Children's or the Mercy Corps or so forth. We try to encourage that built into the M&E framework for this component of the project, there is an indicator which basically says, number of job seekers or percentage of overall users who, after using the service, are successfully matched. The way we track it is typically by actually following up with the employers, because we found over time that young people may overrepresent the success that they have achieved through the service. The employer generally does not have an interest in inflating any sort of outcomes from the match side of things. So we do follow up monthly with employers in the countries where we have a more active role in the service M&E. And we ask them essentially, we see these results on the system, that there's been a match here. Can you confirm that that match has taken place, and can you corroborate? We do the follow-up by SMS at first. We then pick a small sample of employers, and we do phone follow-up. But in terms of tracking placements, there's really a range of options with regard to how you and your own project may want to track it or integrate it as part of your M&E strategy. Before I move on, are there any other questions about the informing component, the alerts? We've covered matching, we've covered informing. I want to move on to interacting next. I'm going to assume by the lack of chat coming in that we're okay to move. If you have other questions that come up, please let me know. Put them in the chat window and we can address them as we finish up this next component. So interacting via mobile can take a number of different formats. We typically favor SMS because it's still the most pervasive, universal, widely used, most quickly responded to mechanism. We also do in-audio services where young people will dial into a hotline and follow a touch-tone menu sequence. We also do mobile web interactions as well through mobile sites, M-sites, or applications. So there's a number of different ways in which you can have a two-way interaction with the young people you serve. What I'm going to show you is just one example of how you might set something up interactively. So this is what we call a goal tracking and feedback service. It's run by SMS. We custom design it for the specific projects where this is used. And the notion here is when you're running a youth livelihoods project, the young people who come into the project have objectives. They've got a vision for what they want to achieve. What we want to ensure is that they are taking steps to meet that objective over the course of a year or over the course of their involvement in your project. And so one way to do that is to invite them to set a goal, submit that goal via mobile, and then track their progress toward that goal over time. So in this case, what we've done is we've created an online platform which is run by our implementing partners. So again, whether you're a World Vision or whether you're a Global Communities or an IRC or whatever the case is, you manage this platform and you create a sequence of questions and answers that can be sent out via SMS. In this case, here's an example of the message that this implementer wants to send out. Welcome to Goal Track. Please text in a one-sentence goal for the upcoming year. You have ultimate freedom, at least on the platforms that we create, I should say, to structure this type of question and answer interaction however you want. It can be multiple choice. It can be open-ended. There's no real restriction. It can also have what we call if-then sequences. So if you answer yes to something, you'll get redirected to a next question. If you answer no to something, you'll get directed in another direction or down another path. I would look in whatever tool you're going to use, whether it's ours or others, for all of these components. You don't want to be restricted in your ability to create an interactive survey. That would be my advice. So here what happens is the implementer creates a poll. They send it out via SMS to thousands of or hundreds of young people like this young woman. She receives it on her phone. It can be any mobile phone. If you're doing an SMS or an audio poll, any phone handset can receive and can respond. You don't have to have a special type of handset. Once you receive the question on your phone, in this case, the notion is it's asking for an interaction. So the young person is responding and they're typing a sentence via SMS, or on an audio hotline, they're able to record a short message and say, hey, here's my goal. This is what I want to achieve. That goal gets texted into the hotline, again, it's up to you in terms of how you want to set the pricing up. If you want this to be a completely free service for young people, great. If you want to young people, hey, there's value in participating in this service for you, so we are going to ask you to pay the same as a regular text message or slightly more than a regular text message. Again, you have all of these options available depending on the country, depending on the context. But here what happens is the young person texts their goal back into the service, and then the interaction takes place over time, which is crucial. So at key points during the year, what will happen is you'll get a little ping, you'll get a message on your phone, or you'll get an automated call at the start of the year. You set a goal. Let us know whether you're meeting that goal. Text back a number or key in on your keypad a number from 1 to 5, where 1 means I'm really not meeting that goal and 5 means absolutely I am. So what we're getting all of a sudden is essentially a very brief M&E survey. It's scaled, it's quantitative. It can come in to a central interface where you can see all of the results displayed in front of you. So you understand from a self-assessment standpoint whether young people feel they are meeting their goals. This is just one example. You can poll your field staff on whether they feel they're receiving enough support from the central office. You can do specific knowledge testing questions. So it's not about a self-assessment. It's a quantitative, objective assessment of concept mastery. There is obviously limitless possibilities to how you can set up these two-way polls or interactions. In our case, what we like to do as well is give multiple different options for visualizing and displaying the data. This is an example, as you can see, it's a fairly specific one. It's a campaign we did with, not with a USAID project, but with a media outlet, Al Jazeera Television, who wanted to do a large-scale poll of Somali youth and ask them what they thought about key civil society or D&G issues in their communities. We sent the poll questions out, similar to what I've just shown you. Results came in, and then we put them on a map. So you can see that 150 people reported right from the tip of the Horn of Africa, and 136 people reported from slightly further south. And if you clicked on these dots here, you could actually zoom in and you could get the responses one by one. Now, this was a public-facing website where anybody could see what the poll results were. We do, again, as we are custom developers of software, what we do is integrated restricted access sites as well, only for your project, for your MIS, or for your GIS. But the goal here really is to create very simple reporting and visual displays of the data. So you're able to share with the mission, you're able to share with your stakeholders in a way that makes sense. So all of those youth goals that were being tracked, let's depict them by location, or let's depict the frequency of youth reporting back, how many people actually track their goals over the year. So these are all different options that can be added to this interacting component. The other thing we do, again, and I speak only from our experience, but we also create mini systems for local partners. So these are local CBOs, community organizations, who you may be giving sub-grants to, or you may be training or building the capacity of. In this case, 5 different CBOs get local systems which they can use to send their own polls to their own individual community stakeholders, that you as the larger implementer can at the same time monitor the usage of the system. So how is it going? Are they really using it? Are people responding, and so forth? We've done this with World Vision in Gaza, where we've created close to 20 different subsystems for local community partners. We've done this in a number of different countries. We've done this for EDC in Somalia as well, where they have created about 5 or 10 different subsystems for local subgrantees. And in each case, this ensures the sustainability of the technology by ensuring that partners on the ground understand it, they know how to use it, and they're able to carry it forward. I mentioned some of the areas where we're using the technology. Here are some others. We use it for attendance monitoring for young people in training programs in the livelihood sector. We use it to keep in touch with alumni. A lot of our partners have expressed that this is a real challenge, that once people finish a program, it's difficult to keep track of them or keep in touch with them. And so, one of the things we do is enable longitudinal tracking through SMS surveys and audio surveys. And then we apply directly to, as I mentioned, the knowledge acquisition monitoring. So you just took a training course, have you mastered this concept? Let's ask you a specific concept-related question. What we bring to the table, again, from our background, because we come from an M&E background, is the design. And I think that's an important takeaway. The technology is great. Again, you can find this technology in a few different places or from multiple sources. What I would encourage you to look out for is ensuring that the design of the technology and the way it's integrated into your project has been thought through. That's crucial because you can have a fantastic product, but if it's not incorporated from the start into your M&E strategy or so forth, it makes it more difficult to truly utilize and benefit from. We've had one question again about gender or cultural constraints that affect the way the polls, and also education and literacy levels. So again, I mean, the polls, we typically don't design the polls. We create the platform, and our partners, because again, as I've said, every project is different and every context is different. Our partners, our implementing partners, so your CHFs, or rather, I should say, your global communities or your Commonics or creative associates, will, with the expertise they have from the project implementation, look and work with the local community as to structuring the polls in a way that take into account gender or cultural considerations. With regard to education and literacy level, if you're literate, SMS polls can be phrased and typically should be phrased in a very basic way. And that ensures that the questions are clear, they're easy to understand. It's not unlike any M&E tool. You want to make sure that the questions are clear to avoid error wherever possible. If the audience is completely illiterate, then again, what we do is integrated text, web, and audio. So if you have an audience which is partially literate, partially not, you can send the same poll out through mobile audio, and they're receiving it as a phone call on their phone. They have to be fundamentally numerate so that they can press numbers on their keypad, but we have found that that's a basic capacity that anyone who has a phone has. So again, as I mentioned, it's a lot about how you structure and how you strategize to ensure that you're getting happy mobile users, such as this individual here, when you're structuring your polls. Let me move on. I just want to make sure that I'm covering as well the learning and sharing components, and then leave some time for additional questions if you have them. So I want to talk about how we use mobile to promote learning. I know that sounds like a fairly broad definition or fairly broad label, but for us, we find that mobile can be used very effectively to deliver on-demand content to individuals. You've got in-person training, that's fantastic, but as soon as you leave the physical training site, you've got additional questions, those can't get answered, or you've forgotten something that happened in the classroom session. I mean, I'm sure we can all relate to this scenario. In communities where there is not good internet access, personal computer or device, advanced device ownership is low, and literacy levels are also low. We do interactive audio and text libraries, we call them, where our partners can create, upload, sequence, and organize different segments or clips of instructional material. And these can then be accessed through a hotline at any time by any member of the program. Here what you see is an initial step where, as a user or a learner, you call into a hotline and you're asked about your location. This is a fantastic basic M&E strategy as well. You can gather data on the users of your service. Once that's done and your user profile has been created, at any subsequent time, you can call into the service and you can choose from a small menu of pre-recorded. These are different skills. How do we go to an interview? How do we write a winning CV? How do we succeed in our first day on the job, and so forth? You can select those clips, and then once you've selected a subject matter, you've got specific pre-recorded segments that are there. So if you've chosen the basic do's and don'ts segment, what would then happen is you'd listen to probably about a 3-minute recorded clip, which has been prepared in a studio either by our implementing partner or by ourselves. We do studio recording in a number of different languages, primarily English, French, and Arabic, but not exclusively. And so what that enables the listener or the learner to access is time-sensitive, specific information that is relevant to what their needs are, relevant to what they're looking for outside of the classroom. An interesting case where we've used this is in Somalia. Again, with Education Development Center there, we created a fairly sophisticated financial literacy curriculum which contains 40 different lessons that could be accessed by mobile. And beyond just accessing the lessons, so you could call in from your phone, as these young women are doing, and you can listen to one of 40 pre-recorded clips which teach you about saving for your future, household budgeting. They're told through a storyline, there are characters. You can then, once you finish listening to the lesson, complete a quiz which asks you questions about the lesson that you've just heard. And the quiz serves two purposes. It helps you build your knowledge. You get immediate feedback, whether you got the right answer or the wrong answer. But then it also helps EDC understand, are young people mastering the concepts that we're presenting to them? In this case, functionally, what happened was we created the entire platform, which let EDC upload audio segments. These are the MP3 files or WAV files, which they had recorded in Somaliland in a studio. The platform lets you sequence them, put them in specific orders, link them to quizzes, set up the quiz structure, create data analytics pages where you're looking at the quiz results, and then swap clips in and out as you change the service over time. We did a similar service for UNDP, also in the Horn of Africa, Kenya, and the Somali regions, which was an information service on the Somali Constitution, which is a new and in-process document. Community members could call in, they could get information about the Constitution and how it would impact them. They could essentially access a list of frequently asked questions and get additional pre-recorded clips which contain information. This was done in Somali and English. We did the recording of the clips, we did the platform setup, the connectivity with the mobile networks, and so forth. In Jordan as well, we did a workforce readiness curriculum, which we recorded in Arabic, segmented, and put into this mobile audio format. As you can gather from the way I've described this service, it's more sophisticated. There are more components to it. It requires an additional investment of time and resource from everyone involved. But ultimately, what you have is a resource that can be used. It can be, in certain cases, adapted to different countries. It can be shared with partners. It can be turned into a revenue-generating service. Really got a product which you can then subsequently reapply in different contexts. And I know that in the case of the Somali Financial Literacy Service, that got a lot of great positive attention from USAID. It was AID funded, of course, but at the same time, it was cited as one of the leading tech innovations of its year when we rolled that out. This was about 2 years ago. So, we know that this is something that is gathering increasing attention as a way to overcome the challenge that young people face when they leave a training site or they leave a specific training venue. I see we've got maybe one question coming in. If you'd like to put your questions into the chat window, I'm happy to take them as we go along. What I'm going to do is wrap up in the time with just the final component here, which we call sharing, essentially. So we've gone through matching, informing, which is a one-way information via mobile, an easy, good, I would say, entry-level or first step if you've not used mobile before in your project. We've talked about interacting, which is the creation of two-way interactive polls or questionnaires. We've talked about learning, which is more in-depth content delivery. Let me talk as well about sharing, so that we've got that as well. So this is a separate service that we have designed in partnership with a number of different partners, and we deliver it in, at the moment, about 12 different countries. This is actually done through State Department funding. Here the notion is you're a young person, you receive training, you're involved in a program, but then you leave that training site and you go home. You want to stay connected with your peers. You come from a rural area, you're female, you come from a community where you're not able to circulate in the community very freely, but you want to share knowledge and you want to ask questions. So what this is a platform which enables our implementing partners. So again, whether you're a DAI or an IRC or whoever the case is, to create many different groups, and we call them interest groups or peer groups. There can be groups created based on a topic like community outreach or community projects. There could be a group created based on a topic like soccer. There could be a group created based on a topic like the environment, young women's issues, or they can be structured based on location, so central, north, south. You get the picture. Once these group structures are created, young people are invited to sign up by, typically SMS, to be a member of these groups. And once you're in the group, what you can do is send a question, a message, an update by sending one single message from your phone. And it then gets redistributed to all other members of your group so that they receive it. You typically might ask a question of your peers. You want to know something. You want to get advice, support, or mentoring. If somebody receives that message and they have the answer to the question, they can text it back to just you or back to the entire group so that we're promoting knowledge exchange, learning, and sharing among young people. This can be done in conjunction with an adult or an expert mentor who sits in the group and is one of the members. So one person in the group may be moderating the discussion. They'll sit on the side, but then they'll come in with their feedback or their advice. Or it can simply be a group of young people by themselves engaging in conversation. Here's an example of some of the types of messages we see coming into the service. So small business owners, first-time entrepreneurs, just starting out, trying to understand what to do if they've got additional revenue at the end of a month. Should I increase my loan payment? They send that out to the group. They may be the only small entrepreneur in their town who's taken part in this larger training. So they send the question out to the group. Somebody's able to respond. They send that message back, and then you've got a real-time information exchange. So for the large numbers of young people who don't have regular internet access, or who do but want a specific group of peers and a specific way of contacting people without using public social media, they may be feeling shy or lacking the confidence to express their question on a very public platform like Facebook or Twitter. This is a closed network of trusted peers who you know because they're interested in the same things you are, and you know that this has been set up by the implementer of the program. And so it enables you to, with much greater confidence, share information, interact, and gain knowledge from other people who are like you. We do this in 12 countries, as I mentioned, for State Department training program alumni. We do support networks for female community leaders, female small business owners. There are really a large number of ways in which the technology can be applied. Again, this requires a little bit of time and resource to set up at the beginning, but for us it's extremely powerful because once it's running, what you're really doing is creating a platform and an enabler, a catalyst for young people to lead their own conversations. And we talk a lot about empowering our stakeholders rather than delivering top-down types of support. This is a fantastic way to do that. I just want to leave you with some of the lessons we've learned from the work that we've done. And we've done this for close to 8 years now, which in the tech world seems to be ancient history. These are my takeaways, which I would leave you guys with from our experience in the field. Make sure the solution that you're implementing is customized. A one-size-fits-all thing will have constraints. And you may, again, it's a trade-off always between budget and resources and time, but I would suggest customize where possible. Your project is unique. It will likely require something unique for it. Training, whether face-to-face or remote, at the start of a service launch goes a long way to ensuring that a service is successful. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be intensive, but ensuring that there's buy-in at your field staff level, that everybody feels comfortable with the technology, that they know how to use it, great. There are two different levels of interaction. One level is for the management of all of these platforms that I've discussed, and that requires a little bit more interaction than the end user. For the end user, the interaction should be simple. It should require no training. It should be very basic. But for your platform management, you want to give them a bit of orientation. Finally, again, direct partnerships with mobile networks where possible, I would recommend. It's hard to do. We can help. If you've got good relationships, great. Ongoing advising and sharing lessons learned. This is a challenge, I think, in all organizations that we work with. You're doing a great project in Peru. How do you apply that learning to Indonesia or to the Philippines? And then just making sure you stay in touch with your stakeholders. I would not just push a service out there and then let it be. You know, get feedback. You're serving a community member, and that's important. You want to understand what they like and what they don't like. So those are the main, I'd say, key points, takeaways, lessons learned. I hope this has been useful in giving you some general ideas as to how you can engage with matching, informing, interacting, learning, and sharing. 5 ways in which you can use mobile technology. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be very easily integrated into what you do. I'll leave you with our contact info if you want that. And let me address some of the questions here that have come in the intervening time. Sherry has asked if we have upgraded applications for areas with deeper smartphone penetration. Absolutely. And as I said, I mean, we don't privilege, or rather we don't discriminate against, obviously, young people who have higher tech access. That's fantastic. What we focus on is integrating across the spectrum so that in one service, you can serve people with smartphones, people who can't read, and people who are somewhere in the middle with SMS access. So someone can send a text message and somebody else can receive that information by listening to an audio call. And so you're addressing every type of user where, where their needs are. Suyog has asked what kind of instructional content is used for low literacy youth. Maybe it would be useful for me to send you more info on the Somalia project if you want to email me afterward. The instructional content can range from financial literacy to basic numeracy concepts to civic engagement, democracy and governance, to entrepreneurship and workforce soft skills. There's really, I mean, we've seen a real range of different options being presented, and I'm happy to share more on Somalia if that would be useful. And I'm sure our colleagues from EDC can also share some of that info. Carla has asked, what are the costs and platforms needed to set up peer networks? Do they remain when project and funding ends? So again, this depends. The way we work as an organization is we set up platforms at the start of a project. We charge a fee for that service, and once that's done, our role in the project delivery, at least from a cost standpoint, ends. So we're there to provide support. We do server hosting of the applications. We maintain the purchasing of credit and the interactions with the mobile network, but we are not an ongoing cost in your project. It's a one-time fee which comes at the start of the project, which is related to days of work for the work that we do. In terms of the cost to run the peer networks, the only running costs that you would encounter would be the text messages themselves. And so it's a question of how you want to deal with that. If you choose to charge young people for the use of the platform, then you can earn revenue, which can then cover the cost of the messages. If you don't, you may want to reach out to a mobile network and ask them whether they may want to come in as a sponsor, whether they may want to donate the messages as part of their social responsibility outreach. So all of these things have actually happened successfully in our experience. So those are some different options. You can obviously look for follow-on funding so that you can sustain the cost-free access to the platform for young people. So pay-per-use, follow-on funding, partnership with mobile networks, whether it's sponsorship or pure donation, those I'd say would be 4 options for maintaining the PeerNet cost coverage over time. And we've tried all of those, and we've had good success in different countries with each method. It really depends on the country you're in, whether the mobile networks are, really interested in partnering, as they are in places from our experience like Rwanda or Iraq or Jordan. or places where it's a very saturated market, and so there are a lot of requests coming in for the mobile networks, and that can make it a little bit more challenging to get some of these commitments. Jerome has asked for the presentation, and Chelsea has said, I think that this will be available. User is also asking if it's being recorded. I'm going to defer to Chelsea on that. I know we're almost at the top of the hour, so if there are any other questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, you have our contact information here again. Please feel free to email us, and we'll be happy to follow up. Again, it's been an honor for us to partner with many of the Making Sense member organizations or organizations who are at the conference every year. And you know, some of you on the call, obviously, we know well from the work that we do with you. And if we've not worked with your organization yet, we would love to. We do everything from the design, the customization, the mobile network components, and then, of course, the advising on strategy based on our experience as implementers. But in a general sense, what I want to really leave you with is, and maybe this sounds trite in 2013, but I would say it's even a year or two ago, you know, don't be afraid to use mobile in your project. It's increasingly becoming a component that funders like USAID are stressing as a crucial aspect of youth livelihoods and financial services projects or initiatives. It's not hard to do. It can be complicated to design and to integrate, but to, at least on a very basic level, use one of these 5 strategies that I've discussed today. It's something we would encourage. From our standpoint, as an implementer in the mobile space, we really want to see a proliferation of this type of service. We want to see lots of projects using mobile tech because it really validates what we believe is a winning strategy for empowering young people. So thanks again for all the, I see a lot of thank you messages coming in, and thanks a lot for those. That's pretty much all from my end. Chelsea, I guess I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacob, for sharing your experience on how we can all utilize mobile technology in our own youth livelihood programming. And as you mentioned earlier, we will post a recording of this presentation online on our website, www.youtheconomicopportunities.org, for any participants who are interested in receiving a copy of that recording and this presentation as well. Our next Apply It webinar, Youth Financial Inclusion Through the Lens of Global Findex Data, co-hosted by the World Bank, will take place on October 16th. And to RSVP for that, you can just go again to our website, youtheconomicopportunities.org. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar.